Hersheypark in Hershey, Pennsylvania is a legendary amusement park, and one of the main reasons is because of their amazing collection of roller coasters, and they have 14 of them. So today I will be ranking every one of them up, from worst to best. Without further ado, let's hop into the list with number 14, Coco Cruiser. This is a standard kiddie coaster built by Zamperla, and it goes around the course 3 times. I don't have much more to say about this coaster, although it is a good stepping stone coaster for kids to work their way up to the bigger rides. At number 13, we have Wild Mouse, and for those who don't know, a Wild Mouse coaster is a coaster that has a lot of lateral forces. I do not really like laterals, meaning this ride is pretty pointless to me. It can be a bit uncomfortable at points, although the final run of airtime hills and turns can be pretty fun. At number 12, we have Trailblazer, a mine train coaster built by Aerodynamics. This ride has a pretty good setting going through the woods and passing by Stormrunner, but the ride lacks in forces, although it can be forgiven because it is a mine train coaster built for families. The ride has quite a few helixes, including the double helix finale, which can be really fun at times. Also, if you're passing by that double helix and a train is coming, make sure to yell, "Imagine riding Trailblazer." At the number 11 spot, I put Super Duper Looper. This ride is basically a glorified mine train with a vertical loop, but that vertical loop is really good, especially since it's circular and not a teardrop shape, so it gives pretty good positives the whole way around. Other than that, this ride has a really cool setting going through the hollow section of the park. At the number 10 spot, we have Laugh Track, which is an indoor family spinning coaster. This ride really surprised me. Although I waited 45 minutes for it, I thought it was totally worth it. The theming in there is really wacky, but it's really cool. The layout itself is really good, combined with the spinning of the train that makes it a very disorienting but fun experience, and you have a really fun coaster. At the number 9 spot, I put Comet, a classic wooden coaster. I think this ride is really fun for families, but not much more than that. I can appreciate the fact that it has buzz bars though, but those don't really come in handy, since you're not going to be out of your seat much. There are a lot of hills on this ride, but none of them really give airtime. Overall, I put this at the weakest of the 3 wooden coasters at Hersheypark, but I still think it is a fun ride nonetheless. At the number 8 spot is Lightning Racer, a GCI wooden coaster. I think this ride is very fun, especially when you race against your friends, but I think the problem for me is not the roughness, because this is actually one of the smoothest GCIs, but I just think some of the layout is taken very slow, and because of that, there are a few dull moments that could be fixed to be better. Other than that, this is a really fun ride, and by the way, if you want any racing tips, go Thunder, because it always wins. At the number 7 spot, I put Jolly Rancher Remix, a Vekoma Boomerang coaster, and I know you're probably thinking, wait, why would you put a Vekoma Boomerang coaster this high? And I have an answer for you. This ride experience is actually really good compared to most Vekoma Boomerangs. First of all, it doesn't have the normal over-the-shoulder restraints by Vekoma or Aero, which make the ride very uncomfortable. It instead has the vest restraints by Vekoma, which are a little tight, but still make the ride experience much, much more pleasant, and remove all the headbanging. Along with that, you have some pretty fun theming with the Jolly Rancher theme, and you get a different light, sound effects, and a flavor every time you ride, which I think makes it a really fun and unique ride experience. At the number 6 spot, I have Wildcat, a GCI wooden coaster, and this ride is very, very rough, but I think it's still fun in a lot of ways. First of all, the layout's actually pretty good, giving some nice moments of laterals and airtime, just what you want from a GCI, and it also has Millennium Flyer trains, meaning that you can enjoy the ride more. But on this ride, you actually have to hold it up and actually try to hold it up, and if you don't, you will be stapled very, very badly. At the number 5 spot, I have Great Bear, a B&M inverted coaster. This ride is very underrated and unique in many ways. Instead of going right into the drop off the lift hill like most inverted coasters, this one has a very weird helix above the ground, which is really cool and gives a nice view of Hersheypark before going down into the drop. The first few inversions are pretty good and give great positives, and then you go over Spring Creek for a few seconds, and then go over a corkscrew that goes over Super Duper Looper, before having a few moments of filler track before going into the brake run. Overall, this is a really good roller coaster, and if it had less filler track and some more elements, then it would be higher. But instead, it has a lot of street track or very dull moments of the ride, and that's why I put it at number 5. At number 4, I have Candymonium, a B&M hypercoaster. This ride is basically Mako, but just not as good. For starters, the 5-second floater hill is absolutely amazing, and the drop itself is very good too. After that, you have a turnaround and a few more camelback hills, which all give sustained airtime. You also have a speed hill, which gives you quite a bit of airtime, before going up into this outer banked wave turn. Then it's weird, and it doesn't really give much airtime unless you're in the very back row, and it still does not give much airtime anyways. Going into the helix around the plaza, you get trimmed a lot, meaning you don't get many airtime moments or forces going around it. After that, you have a few hills into the brake run, ending your ride experience on Candymonium. Overall, this is a pretty good B&M hypercoaster. At number 3, I have Fahrenheit, an intimate looping coaster. This is basically a mix of a B&M looping coaster and a Gerstlauer Eurofighter coaster, and I love it so much. In fact, this is probably the most underrated coaster, in my opinion. The vertical lift is pretty fun, and the beyond vertical drop is absolutely insane in the back row. After that, you have a few graceful and fun inversions before going through the most aggressive airtime hills and corkscrews you'll ever do. In general, I think this is a very snappy and fun ride, and definitely deserving of a top 3 spot at Hersheypark. At the number 2 spot, I have Stormrunner, an intimate accelerator coaster. Where do I start with this ride? Oh, the first element, the launch. This ride doesn't have as good of a launch as Top Thrill Dragster or Max Force, but it still has a very punchy launch, and you will definitely get pinned to the back of your seat. After that, you have a top hat, which will give a ton of airtime, going over it in the back row. And then you have a Cobra loop, which is weird, before going into a flying snake dive, which is absolutely ridiculous and gives a ton of airtime and whip. After that, you have a few turns before heading into the brake run. Overall, a short but crazy and fun ride. And finally, at the number 1 spot, I put Skyrush. This ride is literally airtime heaven, as long as you don't mind your thighs getting crushed, but you don't have to worry about that much normally if you give yourself a little bit of room. But if you go into it and get stapled, then goodbye. Overall, this ride absolutely gives a ton of airtime through its camelback hills or bunny hills, and the first drop in the back row feels like an absolute car crash, even though I've never been in a car crash. Overall, you're flying out of your seat for over half the ride, plus with the positives in some of those very tight turns, and you have an amazing ride. Anyways, that's going to do it for my list of every Hersheypark coaster ranked. Make sure to drop your thoughts on this list in the comments, as this list was very controversial. And while you're at it, make sure to like and subscribe for more Hersheypark and amusement park content. Anyways, this is Zero G Coaster signing out. Have a great rest of your day, and see you guys.
Like swimming, but I'm dangerous. Go. Hippopotamus. Hippopotamus.